get high, but baby, if you want, he'll go down low. Doing a podcast on a random Thursday night. Girl, this blow, he's gonna make you feel alright. I know the manager, he knows what's going down. He'll make you laugh, but he damn sure is not a clown. I know the manager, and this man, he's got clout. He's gonna make you scream, you know he'll make you shout. He's gonna make you scream, he'll know he'll make you shout. I know the manager, yeah.
What up? It's another episode with I Know the Manager. So yeah, this is episode 15 on the podcast. What? So stepping on up, slowly but surely. This is how you can contact me, follow me, get in touch with me if you just want to listen to all my crazy comments or what's going on, or just tweet at me or Facebook me or just follow me on anything. So you can find me on Facebook on I Know the Manager. That's all one word. This is all one word. Twitter, I Know the Manager. On YouTube, I Know the Manager space podcast, or YouTube, I Know the Manager. And then you can find my videos. But you can go to www.adicted podcast. That is addicted podcast, like addicted, but addictedpodcast.com. And then you can find you. Of course, if you found me that way already through there, then you're already there. But I updated the website, added a few cool things. So you can check out the Clash of the Comics, which I'm going to be putting local comedians in there from Huntsville or maybe Florence. You know, I don't really know. We'll see. I do have one comedian in there. And then I made a visual vortex for some of my pictures that's just, you know, to go along with the stories of the stuff that I tell. If I take pictures, I want you to know what's going on. So that way, you know, it doesn't take up a lot of room for y'all, because, you know, it does take room for the guests. So I do try to put them in there, but I'll probably duplicate that. What else? Then I just got some neat stuff on just the beginning page. So see, you better like that. And then I know last week or the week before, whatever, we talked about the ice bucket challenge. So you can now find that on my website. You don't if you can't find it on YouTube, just go to the I Know the Manager videos, and it's right there. It's just the first video of the ice bucket challenge. We did it Carrie style, the horror flick, or whatever you want to call it. So it's cult classic to the cult. It's a classic horror film, and she's crazy, and that we killed that video. It's like 30 seconds, so take some time out of your day. 30 seconds. So yeah, I got a special guest on today. It's going to be the comedian Myq Kaplan. You can find him on Netflix. He's did a few Comedy Central things, a few things, some late night stuff. So just check it out. Or you can go to his website, which I'm sure we'll get into in the podcast. But for now, let's get into my things that I like to do on my podcast that I'm eventually going to get guests involved in, which I will, just not this one. So we're going to play Murder, Marry, Fuck, Murder, Marry, Fuck, Murder, Marry, Fuck. I said that 3 times, suck it. So with Murder, Marry, Fuck. I said it 1 time that time and I screwed that up. So let's see. Let's do Jessica Alba, Katy Perry, and Jennifer Lawrence. I'll give you 5 seconds to Google that. All 3 of them. Bam. Okay, so I would marry Katy Perry. No, Tom, let's back that up. I would fuck Katy Perry, marry Jessica Alba, and kill Jennifer Lawrence, and not because of the nude photos. And speaking of them, it's not a big deal. Like, I get nude photos. I don't, like, at the moment, I have got nude photos, and, well, right now, as we speak, I'm not getting nude photos. I mean, that would be cool if one just magically appeared. It'd be like, oh, you're tapped my house. Some woman tapped my house. Or a guy. I don't know. That would be extremely weird. But so what? Like, it's not a big deal for all them, the females or whoever got the nude pics out. Like, it happens every day. Why do you want to blow it up? Like, I don't understand why we have to blow their lives up, you know, as far as like when Tiger Woods cheated on his wife. Okay, the people that bashed him probably had cheated in their life before. Do they want their shit on blast? I think not. So that's today's lesson. Go suck it. Go suck it. They're just famous people that want lives, and they want private lives, and they do stuff just like we do. They're not perfect. Why make a big deal about it? So that's my thoughts on that. If that's not your thoughts on that, well, go fuck yourself. So today's Throwback Thursday comment is going to be, Luke, I am your father. So I'm going to do it in the Bane voice, Darth Vader voice, and Batman. I will attempt to do this. We'll do Bane first. Just in case I screwed up, that's why I had to tell you. So, yeah, so here we go. Maybe one, maybe not. Luke, I am your father. Alright. Let's do Darth Vader. Luke, I am your father. That didn't really sound much different, did it? That didn't sound too much different, but whatever. So let's do Bane. Where is she? Where is she? Luke, I am your father. Now where is she? Where's your sister? I'm going to molest her. Okay, hopefully that would never happen. But that does happen, an occurrence, and that's a sad thing. So yeah, this is going to be this week's podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed this, and the prank call will be at the very end. So here you go. Have a great day.
Whatever, if you have questions, I'll answer them, or whatever topics you want to discuss. I'm an open book in a free-flowing river.
That's good. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll start. I already do my intro pre-intro.
Okay.
That way no one, I used to sit around and spend 5 minutes with a guest and then just sit there and be like, oh, God.
I appreciate you're saving me that horrible thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I saved you 5 minutes of your life. So that's 5 minutes of your life you can get back, or you did not miss.
Oh, yeah. That's 5 minutes of my life that I'll experience on my own without having the experience that I don't require.
So I am recording now. So you're Myq Kaplan, and I'm Curtis Rambo. That's a real last name.
That is correct.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told anybody that on the podcast. I usually just stick to like Curtis or whatever. So, but I think that was the first time I've ever told him that.
Well, it's a momentous day.
Yeah.
I'm on your podcast. You're on your podcast. It's a pretty exciting thing.
Yeah, I can't beat this. This is like I'm like all giddy. This is exciting to get you on. I was like, because I mean, I think I told you the story. Like I can't remember, but like I watch your Netflix special, and then like once I do that, like when I find a comedian that I like I go all out, and then I go on YouTube, I Google. I just really like get like, oh, they're really good. I really enjoy them. And then like one of my buddies, he was like, he's gonna come into town. He's gonna do a show, and I was like, I will be there. I'm gonna quit my job if I have to be there. and then now you're here.
That's all I want. Yeah, just for people to quit their jobs so that they can see me perform once.
Yeah. Then I'd just go. I'd be like a groupie. I would just follow you wherever you went. That wouldn't happen.
Yeah. If I ever get the opportunity to pay people to come to my shows, I'll be all over it. But for now, I'm sorry that you'll just have to give up your livelihood. I don't call it being homeless. Just call it home free. That's what I've heard. Just sort of get your expenses down, simplify. I hear that can lead to a happier life anyway.
Yeah, I could see that. So, I guess I'll ask you a few. What got you into comedy? Like, what was and I guess what age did it all start? Like, when did that transition start?
I think the question's more is, when did comedy get into me? That's not what I really want to say. But I did say it, so I guess I wanted to. I mean, I don't really...
There's nothing wrong with it.
I want to say it.
Yeah.
I just did say it. I didn't actually grow up knowing a lot about comedy other than what you might expect. You know, Saturday Night Live was a thing, and I watched it sometimes, and I saw some Comedy Central specials, I think, but didn't really know that stand-up was a thing until much later, until I was kind of doing it. I think there was a comedian came to my college named DJ Hazard in the Boston area. He was amazing, and it was like the first time I saw a live comedy show that really like made me know that comedy could be resonating with things that was right. It was like right in my brain. Like I loved like when I watched Paul Reiser when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Like his comedy was real funny to me. I remember watching like a Showtime special he did, and then getting his book Couplehood, and I got that book on tape, and I would like drive around listening to it. I would drive like from place to place. I wasn't just driving in. I gotta listen to the cassette players in the car. But I mean, that comedy was funny, but it was like a lot about, you know, being in a long-term, committed, married relationship, and I understood the things he was saying, but they certainly weren't things that I was like, oh yeah, I'm experiencing that as a, you know, 15, 16, 17-year-old boy. But then when I saw DJ Hazard, and when I was in college, he was saying things that I was like, that's like, I think that, or, you know, like he's thinking a thing that's like an amazing, he just really blew up my brain. And I feel like a lot of people might have had that experience earlier in life. So, you know, can't go back, can't time travel as far as I know, but I'm glad that it happened when it did. And by that point, I was pursuing a music career, like as a singer-songwriter kind of situation where I had songs. Some of them were funny, some of them weren't. I was going around Boston, performing at the local coffee houses and open mic nights and things, but mostly for music, not for comedy, until I found the Comedy Studio at the Hong Kong in Cambridge, Massachusetts, like right across from Harvard. And like I think I might have, one of the reasons I found it is because I knew DJ Hazard like performed there sometimes. I was like, oh, I'll go see him there. And then I asked the owner, Rick Jenkins, I was like, can I come and perform my funny songs here? Is that the... and he was like, sure you can. And he gave me, 7 minutes, and then I would just come and play my songs. And that would happen maybe a few times a semester, if that. So I wasn't really pursuing comedy at all, and whatever I was doing, I was, trying to pursue music, but just eventually the talking in between the songs got more and more enjoyable and exciting, and I was trying to talk as much as possible, and I was like, I guess I'll play a song, but it was sort of the goal to stretch out and not need to play the guitar. So, it was also sort of annoying carrying a guitar around. I don't know how. And I guess they have roadies, when you get to a certain point, but it's nicer to not even need a roadie. So the thing that got me into comedy, I say sometimes, is not wanting to carry a guitar around.
Did you just like smash your guitar one day? You're just like, I'm done. Comedy for life.
Oh yeah, that's I do it every day. Every day I wake up, I smash a guitar, I go about my business, I do some shows. Somewhere along the day, I buy a new guitar, and then the next morning, I smash it.
Because you said something about time travel. If you could time travel, would it be to the past or the future?
Oh, well, I guess it sort of depends on whether you can change the past, or if you're just going to look at it and you're not going to have an effect on it, then I would go to the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess here's a couple things I would do. Like, because if you're going to live there, like the future, who knows what. I mean, it might be amazing, it might be horrible. It's sort of like a gamble. Like, I'm happy here. So, I mean, if you know you could come back also, then I guess it doesn't matter. If you're like, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to take a look. I don't want anything to hurt me. Like, this is all very, like, Myq doesn't really understand the point of this game. No, I want to make sure, even in this hypothetical, that I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
I'm not going to suffer. But I guess, even if it was just to go look, it might be a cool thing to go back and look what was happening with Jesus around, 33 AD-ish. See what, hang out there for a few days. I imagine like a Quantum Leap episode where he's I know he can only go in his own lifetime, but suppose they extend the machine's capacity, and eventually he's like, oh, I'm about to watch the crucifixion. All I have to do is wait 3 days, keep an eye on that cave, see what actually happens, and then, like, the boulder starts to move slightly, and then he's like, your work here is done. And he's like, oh, no, boy! And then he's gone and never finds out. But if it would be possible, that'd be a fine thing to do, to just hopefully settle some informational discrepancies.
Yeah, then he can come back and tell us whatever we needed to know. Correct anything in the Bible or the literature we have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure even if you went back and took pictures or video, brought somebody to verify it, like
Photoshop.
There's people think the moon landing was fake, so I'm sure. I wonder if it's the same people that think the moon landing is fake that also think, believe in the Bible literally. There must be some people that fit both those descriptions.
That's photoshopped. You couldn't take pictures. That's just photoshopped. That's not gonna. So what was it like? Because this would freak me out. I don't know. Like, I mean, if you've done comedy long enough, you've done it enough, and then. Do you have an agent? Like, does somebody, or do you take care of everything? And did you get the call personally, like about the Netflix special, where they're like, "Hey, we want you on here, please"? How did that work?
For the Netflix special, or just for my career in general?
Just the Netflix special, like, or just you have a few Comedy Central specials, right?
I have, I've been on Comedy Central a couple times, including a half-hour special, and I've had some late-night sets, and then now the most recent thing is the Netflix special, which I do have an agent and a manager, and I feel like my manager was definitely heavily involved in the process of, figuring out how the special was going to be produced, and then who was going to own it or lease it, or how do you actually even know how it works exactly? I'm not in on all of the technical.
It's prostitution.
Loops,
it's prostitution.
But basically, we shot it with a company called New Wave. They produce a lot of comedy specials, and then New Wave was the one who sort of shopped it around and then landed it at Netflix, which is what they do a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so I think, I wasn't in direct contact with them, like, for every step of the way, but I think my manager was. So that's a nice thing to have representatives like that for, is to do boring things that you don't understand, and hopefully they're trustworthy and don't take all your money.
That's true. Are you on the road a lot now? Are you like a road comedian now? Or are you like, is that the right term? Did I just fuck that up?
No, a road comedian. I mean, there's a couple movies. There's a movie called I Am Comic, which is a documentary that came out a few years back. I think more recently, I'm not even sure if it's out yet, but sometime around now-ish, or give or take a year, the same guy created a movie that I think is called I Am Road Comic. So, like, the idea of a road comic. Oops, hey, there's a loud noise. It's an ambulance. It's okay. I mean, I'm sure I'm okay. It's not for me.
I'm fine.
I'm okay for now, as much as I can. Hey, there, but for the grace of ambulance, go I. I don't necessarily. I feel like there is, at the extreme, there's some people who you're like, it's sort of black and white, yes and no. That's definitely a road comic. That's definitely not a road comic. Maybe sort of the other side of the spectrum. Sometimes people would see it as like an alt comic, a sort of comic who doesn't perform in any comedy clubs, just sort of, weirder venues with, weirder stuff that like wouldn't work in comedy clubs, but only for like a niche audience. And then there's the idea of like the corresponding stereotype of the road comic as the road dog who's, so battle worn and like weary and only, can only survive pandering to the, crowds of people out on the road, the masses, but not the, the comedy connoisseurs. But in actuality, I think, there's a lot of gray area. Like, say, somebody like Bill Burr, I would think of as sort of like one of the most iconic road comics of our day. I mean, and maybe to say even that he is a road comic, I mean, I think in one sense he is, and in another he's just a comedian. He's not just a comedian, but he's a man, he's a comedian, he's hilarious, and it kind of doesn't matter where he's performing or for whom, you know, whether it's comedy clubs in the middle of nowhere or the middle of America or on the coast or in between, wherever it is, the South, the North, like, I'm sure he has fans everywhere, and much deserved. And then also he could drive, like, as much as I feel like he has railed against and ranted against alternative comedy or alt venues or, you know, places like shows in comic book stores or like the UCB type theaters. He is beloved by the people who attend those, like sort of the comedy savvy, comedy nerd crowd. And so anyway, this is all to say, your question was fine. And I don't necessarily consider myself you know, I don't like to categorize, label, that sort of thing, especially with, I mean, even when a label is maybe as accurate as possible. Like, I definitely, if somebody's like, "Are you a road comic?" I would say, I mean, I perform at comedy clubs, not in New York City, and I also perform in New York City, probably about half, ideally like half and half. Like, I'm at home about half the time, I go out on the road about half the time, like I go to LA every few months, I go up to Boston frequently because I started out there, so there's like some shows that I do there, like once a month sometimes, and some every couple months, and I definitely like to not be on the road all the time, but I also like to not be home all the time. I like to mix it up, have some variety. So, like, if I'm not traveling for too long, I'll probably get restless. And if I'm traveling too long, I'll get probably the other kind of restless. I'll be like, I need more rest.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm home, I get both restless and rest more, ironically.
That's funny.
But yeah, I love performing. I mean, I love performing. So anywhere anybody wants me to be, like the tour that we met on when Zach Sherwin and Micah Sherman and I were heading. We started in Boston and then sort of went down through Pittsburgh to Louisville, Nashville, then hit Huntsville, where you are, and then went to the various Carolinas, a couple places in Georgia, up through Virginia, and back home in the course of about 3 weeks. That was an amazing time, though also, like, I love doing it with my buddies. If I was doing that on my own, that would have been, I think, a longer time than I would normally want to be out, you know, traveling, driving hours a day on my own. But there are people who do that, certainly. So to that respect, there are certainly people who are more road-like comics than I am.
And then they end up roadkill.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Road killing.
Road killing it. Slade one. That's like a.
I like it.
That's
good one, Curtis.
That's a new thing I'm coming up. Instead of killing it, because you know a lot of comedians, I killed it, and I'm just gonna if I ever step on stage, which it's happening. I finally talked to somebody yesterday. He was just like, you got to get up there, just So he was like, I want to help, and I was like, okay, cool. But then I did a few podcasts. A few podcasts ago with some comedians, and instead of saying killing it, I'm going to say Slade one, and then I'm totally going to change the game. That's been going on for
sounds good.
Or try to. So, but yeah, I think I'm finally gonna do it. I know I talked to you a little bit about it. I'll finally step out on. It is a small stage, but I will step one step up there because there's not two steps. So I just step one step up there, and then I will do a little 5-minute bit, and then he said, you will probably suck and get no laughs, but if you do, you're doing good. But he like, I like to be prepared for the worst, you know. So I'm prepared. Yeah. I'm totally prepared for watermelons to be thrown at my head.
Well, it's nice when sort of the classic thing that is thrown at a bad comedian in movies or in, cartoons, or probably mostly cartoons, I feel like. It's tomatoes. So you're like, maybe expecting tomatoes. You're like, I will, I'll expect even worse. Watermelon. So when it is tomatoes, you'll be like, wow, at least it wasn't watermelon.
Yeah. Yeah, at least, yeah. Then they walk out to my car, they key my car, you kinda suck. So they at least, hopefully they usually just use the word kinda, that way they don't ruin my whole life, that I take that all through the rest of to my 50s, Cry in the mirror every day, I hate myself.
Oh, sure. I mean, whether or not you're a performer, life has its ups and downs, and, it's not good to expect the worst all the time.
No.
But, sort of having a hope for the best, plan for the worst mentality at play, have both of those, that dichotomy in operation, so that you're not constantly being disappointed when things don't go your way, whether in life or on stage, that you appreciate and are grateful for what you do have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little bit of both. I'm hoping for the worst, but I'm praying for the best. So I do this podcast, and then I in another life that I have, kind of like another life, I travel, not kind of locally. Did have to go to New York and Baltimore one time, but like speak for something. So that kind of takes the edge off of like getting in front of people. Like that's, usually I'm nervous like the first minute or two, usually minute now, but you kind of get used to, I don't know, I guess you get used to. Have you gotten used to it,
I was performing sort of my whole life music-wise. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about, is a question about just being on stage, and being, like feeling comfortable, feeling like less nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I played the violin since I was a child,
mm-hmm.
and I always had to like perform, sometimes with orchestras or chamber groups or other, like it wasn't just me, but then there were a lot of like solo performances, recitals, sometimes it would just be at my teacher's house, but then sometimes it would be, at my school or in front of, like dozens of people, hundreds of people sometimes. Like it was a thing that I just sort of grew up with and never really learned to fear it.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think that when you're a child, like you're a little like less connected to the fact that there are, there's, I think at a certain age, you don't even know that other people's minds exist. Like you think like, oh, I am all there is. Like, wow, my brain exists and whatever's in it, that's what's in other people. And so I think I started violin so young that once I was performing, it was like, I only remember being nervous on stage as a violinist, like kind of once. Like I'm not a professional. I didn't, I wasn't in super high pressure situations a lot, but I remember one recital where I felt like sort of shaky on the inside, and afterwards my mom told me that it didn't look like that at all. I thought I must have looked like I was just shaking to everybody the whole time, but it was just an internal thing. And at that point I was like, I don't know if that was like a turning point for me that, let's say it is. So I was like, I guess if nobody can see that I'm nervous, then it doesn't even matter if I'm nervous or not. So let's not be nervous. That's maybe a fiction that I've just created, but
it's a good one though.
I like it. But yeah, for the most part, I was never really nervous, and then I sort of started playing songs on the guitar and writing my own songs and playing them for friends until like I had like welcoming audiences, which a lot of times when people take a comedy class, that's sort of like a cushiony beginning for them. Your finale, your big graduation moment will probably be, even if it's at a comedy club, like your classmates are there, your friends, your family, everybody's very supportive. So the possibility of bombing is like less real.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then eventually you have to get out there into the world. But, I've certainly had my share of, I don't want to say failures, because every negative experience has in it the opportunity for growth and learning.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's just a matter of attitude. You're going to, not entertain every person in every crowd, in every situation, at every moment, forever. So knowing that, like, let that take the edge off. And so I didn't when I started doing comedy, I was like, I guess, I actually thought that I was, I think you have to think, like, I thought that I was better than I was. And, at every step of the way, you can look back at your past self and see the progress you've made, because you're like, oh, I wasn't as good as I thought I am, but now I think I'm better than that, at least. And then the next year you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe I thought I was better then. I was nothing then. I was nothing then. Like, now finally I'm, every moment I always feel like, okay, yeah, this is pretty good. At least now I'm not like I'm the best. I'm like, oh yeah, I think I at least know that I know what I'm doing more than I used to know what I'm doing. And
that's good. I hope you don't de-evolve. Your brain de-evolves. Less and less as time goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, like now, like on this tour is the first time that Zach and I and Micah all started learning how to freestyle rap, or continuing to learn, honing our skills at freestyling to the point that we enjoyed ending every show with a freestyle that would involve everybody who was involved with the show who wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it's real fun, and part of it is like, I'm not a rapper. I'm definitely not a professional rapper. I guess if I am rapping, then in those moments you could say that I am a rapper, but I'm not going to say to people, there are people who rap for a living or who have rapped their whole lives, or, some, they put in the hours and the time and the care and the work. And I am now, every day that I can, working on freestyling an hour a day. But part of it is just you have to know that, like, failure is imminent in any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so knowing that I'm not a professional, knowing that there are no stakes for me with rapping. Like, even comedy, like, maybe there are stakes, but I have to act as though, and I believe there are no stakes,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, like, isn't it terrifying? Like, well, what's the worst thing that happens? A room full of people hate you, and then you go about your business and never see them again? Or maybe you do see them again, and that seems, awkward, potentially. Like, if you only do comedy in a town that has a very small population of comedy audience members. But especially, in New York City, tons of the audiences are tourists. If an audience full of tourists doesn't enjoy what I did, then they'll be gone and never know who I am for the rest of their lives, my life. Like, and ultimately, all that we do is but a blip on the grand scheme of the universe. So why not try things and fail things? Succeeding and failing are so close to the same thing in the grand scheme of things, in that neither of them matter.
Yeah, even if you fail at just say a joke, it's not like that joke was awful. It was just that maybe it needed to be tweaked a little bit. I guess that's the correct word. Because I've seen. Oh yeah. I go to the open mics here.
Using tons of great words.
And at the open mics here, I've went the last few months, and then there's pretty much the same comedians are there, and then. But I've seen, 2 or 3 of them, start, I guess. And then they did a show last Monday. Pretty much, it was a 12-minute bit instead of 5. It was, it was Labor Day, Memorial Day? I don't know what day it was. It was one of them. And then so they did a 12-minute show. And, but it was the same jokes, but they were a lot better because they changed some wording, took this out, added this, and then, put more of a...
Oh, yeah. That is absolutely...
And I was just awesome.
Sometimes I don't want to say that there are jokes that are objectively horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll talk about my own jokes. Like, there's definitely things that I think, I'm like, oh, I think this might be funny. And then the next day, I can maybe not even see what I thought the funny thing could be. Or maybe I thought it would be interesting. And, you don't have the full context. But, for the most part, I think if you think something can be funny, you don't know how funny it's going to be. Like, sometimes I'll think this isn't going to be funny, but I like it. And then, how sometimes, you ever have, I don't know if you're attracted to women or men or both or
women.
Others, but I'm attracted to women. And there was a girl in my college who, I thought was beautiful, but I didn't think that other people would think she was as beautiful as I thought she was. Because I thought it was just something, I thought she had a very specific look. I thought her face was real specific. So I was like, some people will define it as attractive, but not everybody. But then I found out a lot more people thought she was attractive. So I feel like that's sometimes a joke you think will be I think this is only for me. But it turns out that a lot of people might like it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good terminology. That's good.
Yeah, every joke is like a pretty lady or a pretty man or a pretty whatever kind of gender or person or being that you want to be.
Or alien. Oh yeah, in the crowd. You know, when you were down here, because I know it was heckling, and but you did great with it. But how annoying was it? And you know, just be blunt, honest. It doesn't matter. No one's gonna listen to this podcast. I'm just kidding. Several people listen. Maybe, but when you know that one specific guy was like roll tide all through the show, that became the theme. How was that like annoying, or how was it? Because you did a great spin on it. Like you even just right there, you were like, oh well, I'll just play off of it, which sometimes is good. I feel like because you can do that during a podcast. You can play off, and I know you do a podcast. Come hang out with Myq and me, right? Is it Hang Out with Myq?
Hang Out with Me.
Hang Out with Me, okay.
Is the name of the podcast, and I am Myq, so I am the me. But yeah, Hang Out with Me is the name of the podcast.
Spoiler alert.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the main difference between doing a podcast and doing a stand-up act for most people, for me, let's say, is on a podcast, the purpose is to interact with the people, like say things that hopefully, I mean, I try to say mostly things that I haven't said before. Like, I don't just want to tell the same stories over and over. And I want to learn about the people and interact with them. Sometimes I'll have people on who are improvisers, and what you might get into bits, like that haven't been done, not people like planned, prepared stage bits, like as a stand-up, but just, funny characters, funny back and forths, but then also just like funny conversations or meaningful conversation. It's a much more of a specifically not planned interaction, but it's planned that we're having interactions. Whereas with stand-up, for most people, it's not the case that you want interaction with the audience. Like, some people might do crowd work. There's some comedians that are great at asking the crowd questions and then, tying that all together in like there are people like Jimmy Pardo is an amazing guy with crowd work. And that is like, he will make it known that that's what's going to go on. Like, he'll ask people questions, and then when he wants to talk, he'll make it clear that it's his time to talk. Whereas heckling is, somebody else sort of imposing, like, they're like, they're going to be like, I'm going to make it a dialogue, when if it is a dialogue, it should be comedian directed, ideally.
Yeah.
There are different places in the world. I know in England, I think heckling has a different place in that, as I understand it, I haven't been, but that they might try to heckle you as sort of a measure of, like, let's see how he deals with it. And then if it gets dealt with, then they're like, all right, well, listen. Like, which I understand, and I think sometimes people here have that mentality also. Like, they're like, I'm helping, I'm playing. Like, because sometimes a heckler will say a thing that the comedian will spin gold out of. But here's the thing that'll happen. Like, if hecklers never say anything, the comedian doesn't need them. The comedian will have they'll have their prepared material, like which is the bulk of what they have planned to do for the most part. I don't want to speak for every stand-up, but generally that's how stand-up works, in my experience. Like, I did a show once, it was sort of like a Christmassy, I think it was a Christmas party for like a company, so it was like only like 20 or 30 people in a small room, all from this company. And a guy set up, there was like sort of the Office cut up, this guy who's like clearly, the big man on Office, the big, like, he was not, he was well-meaning, and he was not aggressively negative, he wasn't negatively aggressive, but he would like interject things once in a while. And at one point, I think I said something that, I made a joke that landed very successfully based on a thing that he had said. And he was like, oh, look at that, I helped you there. And I was like, well, I was hired to do 20 minutes of comedy here, and I was going to fill those 20 minutes with or without you. I would have said other funny things, if not that one. So I just want him to know that he doesn't get credit for helping the show, because the show would have been the show with or without him.
All the other shows were without him, and you did completely fine. So.
Oh yeah, and to bring it back to the question you asked specifically with the guy, was it only one guy yelling "Roll Tide" repeatedly?
I think it was maybe two. Like, I think one guy stopped, and then another guy just picked up, and it was just kind of like back and forth through the night. And I was just like, oh, okay.
So in hindsight, I'm like, it was an interesting experience. I understand now that that's the kind of thing that happens in Alabama or in certain parts of Alabama, that there is that culture of yelling Roll Tide whenever there is a thoughtful pause, let's say. But so there's a comedian named Joe Wong in Boston who is very funny, a friend of mine, and he has a joke that goes something like this. He says, "I don't approve of public nudity, but when it happens, I want to be there."
Okay.
And honestly, I love the joke, and it makes complete sense, and I think it's sort of applicable to this heckling situation. Like, now that the heckling is over, like, we all have this story, this experience of a thing that didn't happen ever before, might not happen ever again. It's like, in some ways, you know, you can see my comedy, like, eventually I'll, like, the stand-up, the prepared bits that I did, I will record. They'll be in an album, they'll be on a special, but sometimes those electric moments that happen only once are like a thing that make live comedy so exciting. Mm-hmm. There can be a jerk, you know, there can be somebody, you know, like a flasher, like to be like, oh, maybe you don't want to see that, but given that it's happening, you know, I guess you're gonna look, you're gonna enjoy it as much, you're gonna, you know, not ignore reality. So when it happens, it's good to be able to do something about it, but if it doesn't happen, the show, I've had plenty of great shows where nobody yelled anything.
What's some crazy, like, you know, I don't know, I guess it would be a war story, I don't know, some creepy or fun things that's happened while you've been on tours and stuff. Like, what's the most creepiest thing? And I guess it would be different for you since you're a guy, but because if I were to ask a girl that, they would like, a guy waited for me 10 hours before and after the show and then tried to rape me. I hope not. I hope that really hasn't happened, but I'm sure it has maybe been attempted.
I guess I have an answer to, maybe it won't be the exact thing that you're asking, but kind of, you just reminded me of this situation at least. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine, yeah.
Great. We did a show in Greensboro, North Carolina. We actually did 2 shows there. And it was like the last Saturday of our tour. And a girl came up to us, came up to me after the first show, and she was like, "Oh man, what a great show." I think maybe it was before the show even, but it was either before or after, not important to the story. She said something like, "I drove 4.5 hours to see this show." And we're like, "Oh wow, thank you for doing this, amazing. Where did you come from?" And like, it looked like she had a tattoo of a state on her arm, and she pointed to her arm. She's like, "Virginia." And then Zach said, Zach Sherwin, who was performing on the shows with me, he was like, "Oh wow, we're actually going to be performing in Richmond in like 4 days or 5 days." And she was like, "I live in Richmond." And we're like, "Oh, well, then you could have just come then." And I mean, like, we're like, "Thanks for coming here." She's like, "Why did you come here if we had a show in Richmond?" She's like, "I didn't know you had a show in Richmond." She's like, she apparently said she had searched online for like where we were going to be, or like Myq Kaplan tour. She was like, she never showed it to me, but she's like, "I'll show you this website that said Myq Kaplan tour dates bring him to like Austria and Washington and Greensboro, North Carolina." And I'm like, "I've never been to Austria. I have no such plans to. We have been to Washington, but we weren't going there on that tour." And like, lucky that it actually came up with a real existing tour date for Greensboro. Imagine if you had driven 4.5 hours to Austria. Yeah. At least she enjoyed that show, and then she drove 4.5 hours home, and then we got her free tickets to the show in Richmond as she came to that one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's funny. That's crazy. Oh man, I would have felt bad.
But yeah, if I were a lady and she were like an older man, like we were roles switched, like she was a younger lady, I'm an older guy than her. If she was the performer and I was like, "I drove 4.5 hours to see you," I'm like, "Wait, but I'm going to be in your town later." "Yeah, that's right."
I couldn't wait. I love you.
Mm.
That's funny though. That is a crazy story. So there was pretty much just like a false site, or supposedly a false site out there with just everything like totally just all screwed up.
I mean, I still haven't seen it. I haven't really looked that much into it. But yeah, I guess sometimes there are weird websites out there that just want your clicks or whatever. So they might like extrapolate, they might grab information from different sites and slap it together. I guess I don't know a lot about this thing, but she also could have just been a crazy person. But I think she was not. I think she had real experiences. Maybe in the future I would go like directly to my website to look at my tour dates and not just a random site that's not mine.
Ticket.com's trying to sabotage you. Yeah, that would have been a lot easier for her to do. Just go to your website specifically made for you and your tour dates and everything else.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And now, I have an app on my phone, so I went to your website once, but is it just all one website for your podcast, for your tour dates, for everything? Is it all one, or does your podcast have its own thing?
Good question. My podcast is on the Keith and the Girl network, so all the episodes can be found, and you can subscribe by going to their website. Like, I have a page on their website, which is keithandthegirl.com/hang, or KATG.com/hang. You can also get to that website through my website. So my website, MyqKaplan.com, has, main page with, news and things, and there's a page with my videos where you can see, my late-night sets and other TV spots and, cartoons and things that have been made of my jokes and music videos. And then there's, a page with my tour dates, and a page with, there's a lot of pages, pages with links to other podcasts I've been on of other people, and then there's a link if you just don't want to remember the thing I told you to go for my podcast. There's a podcast link that'll take you right there. So trying to help everybody out. If you just go to my website, then you'll be able to get anywhere else. But you will have to go to my website. You can't just make up a site.
Yeah, there's no just thinking that and it will happen. You physically have to get on your phone or type in www and the rest. If you don't, well, then nothing's going to happen. And that would be no fun for you because you'll miss out on a lot.
True.
So I'm on. I have been listening to your, because I didn't know you did podcast. I did not, or I would have. I'm big into podcasts. I listen to a lot, and I drive 35 minutes to work and then 35 back. So I have pretty much 5 days a week. I'm going there and back to a podcast. Every now and then I'll get spiffy and I'll listen to some music, but very rarely. So once I found out you had a podcast, I was like, oh well, that's gonna happen. So I think I'm on. I think I'm on 12 now out of 100 and a billion. What is it, 138 or 180 now? I mean, you have a lot.
It is definitely, it's getting closer to 200. I think we're in the 190s right now. So, but thanks in a world where there are so many podcasts and also so many other things like books on tape you could listen to or music, I always appreciate when people take the time to listen to an episode. Even I'm the kind of person who, I like to listen to everything about, if I like a person, Paul Tompkins, one of my favorite comedians. So I was excited when he started doing a podcast, the Pod F Tomcast, and he would only put out one a month, so it was a very manageable load. But if you listen from the beginning, I think I listened to Mark Maron's from the beginning, but then they just started coming faster and faster. It was two, maybe 1 a week, then 2 a week, then 3 a week, or sometimes. And I know Pete Holmes had a podcast called You Made It Weird, which is great. I love all these podcasts, but some of them, Pete sometimes will be I think when I did it, I was a guest, and it was about an hour and a half conversation, and he would have those come out a couple times a week, and then eventually they were 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and they're great, but it's, I don't think it's possible it's certainly not possible for everybody to fully listen to every podcast episode of every podcast. So that's why I'm always greatly appreciative when people listen to any of mine, let alone try to do all of them, which is why I also try to keep mine to about 45 minutes each.
Yeah, you're pretty good about that. I've always noticed that. I'm like, oh, he's like, well, it's time to go.
Yeah, I mean, often it's like I want people to be, like sad that it's ending, not like when is this going to be over.
Yeah. Now they always keep me interested, and you kind of, like and it's cool. Like I pretty much do the same thing you do. Like you always have just new guests on, and some of them come back on, and stuff like that. But it's always just for me is just doing this, and I hope the audience and then the guest it never gets old. It's not. It's just something new every time, or something different. And I guess it would be if it wasn't that person, but. I guess it would always be something new. Or hopefully we talked about something new. What if you just had 128 episodes of the same thing?
Oh, yeah. That's why it's so easy to do. People are like, how do you do it? 2 podcasts a week? Well, I just say the same stuff every time. I actually just had the conversation once, and I just release it twice a week forever.
Sometimes I'll cut it up and move this line over this way and put some stuff in the front we did in the back, so and people never catch on. So yeah.
Excellent.
Huh?
Excellent, I said.
So yeah, I like, but it's always it's always new and different, and I'm like you, like I'm very appreciative. I thanked a lot of my audience. Not last podcast. Well, I usually try to, but the podcast before that, I really thanked a lot of people and a few fans because like. I think one fan made I do a 10-minute bit on Tuesdays. They made me the I Know the Nerd logo, and like that's like a big deal to me for like someone to take out. And I don't know how long it took, but it even 5 minutes they're taking out time of their day to help me. So and just listening to a podcast. I mean, no one. A lot of my friends, like my real friends, they're like, well, I don't, they're like an hour long. When do I listen to it? And I try to explain, like, well, just do what I do. Just go on a car ride. And they're like, I'm just like you. Like, I'm very appreciative for anybody to listen to me rather than music.
So, everybody who's listening right now, we are both appreciative of what you're doing. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you. For a good several minutes.
Yeah, and if this is in the future, then we're still appreciative of you that didn't listen to this one when it came out.
Oh yeah, that's time travel appreciation right there.
So did you?
So I guess I would time travel to the future via podcast to thank everyone for listening.
Well, we did. Well, that's where that's where I would go now. I would physically, we're going to go into the future, like we were talking about earlier, to thank everybody. So at some point, we're thanking some people in the future. So we time traveled during this podcast to thank people.
I mean, that is in a sense what I mean, as much as time travel. It doesn't exist. This is like the thing we have to it. Like, do you hear about the new time capsule of books that's going on now? Like, I just read Margaret Atwood is the first author who wrote a story that won't appear in print for 100 years because they're planting trees right now, and in 100 years, when those trees are big enough, they're gonna cut them down and then print her book on those pages, and then, I don't know if it's a book or if it's just a story, but then I think every year they're going to get a different author to write a thing, and then they're going to keep I don't know if it's every 100 years or if it's all in 100 years. Yeah. But it's a pretty cool thing that you can, now the technology exists to reach people all across time and space.
Explain!
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, a podcast. Sometimes they will. I know I have a friend who was on At Midnight, the show on Comedy Central, she was on an episode that has never aired and may never air because I think they're just keeping it as like a backup.
Yeah.
In case something happens, an emergency one day, or somebody gets sick, or for whatever reason they can't record and release one. They're like, well, we have this one ready to go just in case. But if everything goes smoothly forever, then that one will never be used. So we can do that with a podcast also. Just have some guests that are okay with maybe never being heard, or not being heard in their own lifetime.
This might come out 40 years from now after you're dead, or 50.
Yeah. Well, how about, if you want it to come out sooner, we'll just do it whenever after you're dead, just like the day after you're dead, so you can never listen. But if you want other people to listen, then just know, if you don't take care of yourself as well, it'll come out sooner.
So work out, eat your Wheaties, or don't. You have the choice.
I mean, if you want to keep in shape, I guess you don't really care about your fans, but your health and the people who want to hear that podcast, okay, I guess so.
You have no idea what I've done. I know that you took the things that mean the most to me.
What?
Appreciate.
What time is it? Well, we got a few more minutes. That's about it. We got a few more minutes. Trying to think. What do you have any questions? Do you specifically want to talk about anything at this moment? We have 10 minutes or so of free air.
Well, I guess, you've obviously talked about yourself, I assume, on podcasts before, so I don't want to rehash anything too much. But have you always lived in Alabama?
Well, I was born in, I haven't talked about this. I was born in South Carolina, and then we moved, I guess I was about 2 or 3, and I say 3, like I have this vivid memory of me, like, because this is how I didn't know my age, but I talked to my mom about it. This is a good story, I guess. I was 3 years old, and I remember getting this, it wasn't a bike, I guess it was like a tricycle, I don't know what you call it. It's got one wheel in the front and 2 wheels in the back. That's a tricycle, right? And
yeah.
I remember it being yellow, black, and red, and there was a Christmas tree, and I rode around it. I remember that, and I asked her quite a few years later, like, how old was I? And she said I was 3. But anyways, that's as far back as I can remember anything as clear as day. But even days after that, like, I don't remember anything. That was just a specific point in time that I remember. So at that point, we're in Kentucky, and then about 9, I had a lot of stuff happen family-wise, with my dad and stuff. So we had to move away from there as quick as possible. Plus, Grandpa wasn't in the best of health. So when I was about 9, I moved here. So, most time when people ask me, like, where did I grow up, I'm like, Alabama, But if anybody ever says, well, I lived in Kentucky, I kind of like, oh, me too, So, but if they never bring that up, I'm like, oh, I was raised in, I was raised in Alabama. So
you could like, in a group of people, and everybody's like, oh, where are you from? I grew up in Alabama. And somebody's like, oh, I was actually, I spent a lot of time in Kentucky. You're like, oh, actually, yeah, I lived there as well. And then somebody's, oh, and I was born in South Carolina. Oh, me too. They're like, well, are you just trying to, everybody like you?
Are you? Oh, that's funny. So that's,
but that's cool.
Yeah, it's fine here. It's all right. I'm just moved to Huntsville like a few months ago. I lived in like a small town. It wasn't that big, but it wasn't small. But I lived in Birmingham, have you been to Birmingham yet, Alabama?
I think I was there a few years ago, but only for like a day probably. I don't remember much.
It's more of a city, it's more of and I moved there for a few years, and I was like, I like the cities better than I do being out in the middle of nowhere where you can just bowl or go watch a movie or eat at any fast food restaurant you want. So, because that's pretty much how it was. So, that's why I moved here. Well, I moved here because I was engaged, actually. That didn't work. So.
You were engaged, and you are now not with the person or with the person?
Yeah, I'm disengaged. Oh, yeah, I'm disengaged now.
Engaged.
Yeah, I was like, can I have my ring back? And no, that didn't work out. That didn't. And I think I've talked about it on a few podcasts. It was just like, it just was not meant to be. Like, it's very chaotic. And even for her, like, it wasn't good for her, it wasn't good for me. Like, we are both in agreement about that. Like, we just,
Are you guys friends now, or do you not talk?
We have to see each other pretty regularly, and we haven't in a while, which isn't good or bad, but we had to for quite a while, and it was needless to say, we never really talked. We made a few attempts to like just a simple hug, like, hey, I care about your well-being, I care about you. But even doing that was very, it was very rough. Not even like in a hurting sense, it was kind of bitter. But I think.
Sure, you need some time and space to separate.
And I haven't seen her in a few weeks, so I think now, since I haven't seen her, I would be like, hey, how are you? So it's just, I'm glad we both were in agreement. Like, it was very volatile for us. We're always just fighting, not like manhandling. That is a false statement of Alabama, although it does happen.
Can I ask, how long were you guys together before you got engaged?
Not very long. Like, I will tell you this, we were together, I think 10 months all together and engaged.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So a lot of that was my fault. Like, I totally agree. Like, I was just like, oh, marriage, So, and then it just did not work out. Like, because then once we got engaged, it was just like, and it was nothing on her. It was just like, I guess in our minds, or my mind at least, maybe it was like a goal. It was like, oh, I reached it, and I hope she does not take that the wrong way, but she'll get it. She will understand it one day.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people think about, especially when you're younger, like you're, sort of raised as a child, you don't know what marriage is really. You don't know what a long-term relationship is about. Mm-hmm. You don't know that it takes commitment and energy and work and time, and that there are ups and downs. It's not just every fairy tale ends and they all lived happily ever after, and they don't delve into what's involved in that happily ever after. It's not just living on a cloud full of rainbows and treasure and candy. So especially if you get married younger, then you're like, so many people focus on the wedding instead of the marriage. Like, oh, this is the big day, the most important day. When I've never really even understood that, because if I've been married, mm-hmm. and I don't think the wedding was a fun time. It was a nice party. It was nice to have the people that we cared about around us while we celebrated being together. Mm-hmm. But I still feel like the day, days that are more important than a wedding to me would be meeting the person, or the day that I knew that I loved them, the third date, or the point, there's got to be some point before which you're like, oh, when you want to marry them, or when you want to be with them for an extended period of time, when they said yes to marrying you, or when you said yes to marrying them, or when you agreed mutually, oh yeah, let's keep doing this. There's no, I have a girlfriend right now. Right now, I have a girlfriend.
She's not imaginary.
Right now, and I love her, and I want to keep loving her and keep being with her. Neither of us. She's not a person who I think wants to get married, and I am happy to not get married. And I'm like, oh, please don't marry me. We don't. I don't ask her that every day, but will you not marry me? That. And she. But yeah. I guess my point is just that I loved the first. I now in retrospect, I'm like, oh man, I remember the first email she sent me. I remember the first day that we kissed. I remember, a bunch of days specifically where we, the first day we did mushrooms together. The first day we slept in the same place. And all of those things are memorable moments that even if we had a wedding, that wouldn't be more valuable to me than, the conglomeration of those moments,
Yeah, it's kind of like you get to the point. This is the big day, and then you talk about that for the rest of your life. Instead, that would be that's why you got married, is because of them special days. That.
Yeah, the thing is a commemoration of the relationship. The relationship is the important thing. It's how a dog is a thing that we call a dog. The word dog doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're just dog. It could be a different word. It could be canine. It could be in a different language, chien. It could be whatever it is. the dog doesn't change based on what we call it, the same way that, like, a marriage or a relationship is what it is, and the wedding shouldn't have or doesn't have an effect on the shape of it overall, unless it, you know, brings out the craziness in one or both of the people and makes it like, oh, if we can't have one nice day together, like, maybe we shouldn't have our whole lives together. But ideally, the relationship is the thing, and it doesn't matter, like, no one point on that chain, on the chain of time of the relationship is necessarily, like, the best, or can be. I mean, maybe one is, who knows? I don't know. I ran out of things to say.
Well, that was good. That I kind of learned a lot there. Then, because a lot on the just the wedding, we didn't focus on the, like, I mean, we tried, I guess, but more of it was consumed by that one day, like, things leading up to it, like the engagement party, et cetera, et cetera. That's all it was in the end. Like, that's all it was. And that's, we slept together in the same room, we talked on the phone, text, but 90% of the time, that's exactly what the conversations were. So that makes complete exact sense. If there was no other reason why you were supposed to be on this podcast, that was exactly why.
Well, I'm happy. Let me also say, I mean, I think you understand this now too, but the idea that getting engaged, and I actually also did get engaged. I was in my mid-20s, and I got engaged before we'd been together a year. Like, we were together, like, about 3 years total, but we got engaged at about 11 months, and then got married at about a year and a half being together, which is, I'm going to say, for myself, too soon, and for a lot of people, too soon, because, like, you definitely don't know somebody fully. Like, you don't know, if you're going to spend your whole life with somebody, you've met them, you know them less than a year, like, maybe you don't live, if you don't live with them yet, like, then there's a whole component of things that you don't know until, maybe some people don't like to live together before marriage, but I think it is a good idea. I mean, I think living together is a bigger deal than even being married in a way, like, determining, like, shared finances, shared responsibilities, like, what do you like in the morning? What do you like in, before bed? Like, you get to see each other, not just, putting on your best face on a date, but, warts and all. Like, oh, does this person have warts? Good to know,
He yells at the TV screen.
Exactly. So I think that, recommendations include, don't put too much emphasis on the wedding over the relationship, and wait more than a year. I'd say 2 years. I mean, at 2 years you can start talking about, oh yeah, we like each other enough to have been together for 2 years, and we want to keep being together. Let's keep moving forward in a way that do we both want to? Great. It's, I mean, everybody's different. There's a lot of real special, I think on the tour in Kentucky, there was, like, some bachelorette parties at the shows that we did, and I would ask them sometimes, like, how long have you guys been together? And one woman was like, long enough. And I was like, oh, well, then that seems like maybe you don't tell people the real answer anymore, because people have been thinking that it's not long enough. Like,
3 days.
If you said 6, I'd be like, oh, that's definitely long enough. No need to be coy about it.
5 days? Yeah, just 5 days. Yeah, that was a whole, I don't know what happened. And I learned a lot from that, because I put more emphasis on the relationship, and and you're exactly, and I'm with you on that. There's a lot to going in. When you move in with somebody, that is just different than going to see them, even if you see each other every day or every other day or talk to them. That is a whole nother life and realm and vortex that just, it opens up a lot of neat conversations and a lot of neat learning, or not a lot neat learning, because, if you live a certain way and then they live the opposite, I mean, there's a lot of clashes, and if you want to be with that person, it's kind of like give and take, which is very hard. I'm very selfish.
But if you know that you're selfish, then going into a relationship, or you can know not to get into a relationship until you're less
Yeah.
selfish, or you find a person if you want to be less selfish, or you can at least warn the person and be like, here's the ways in which I do this. And if that doesn't work for you, then great, let's not do it. Or if it works, then great. Or how are you selfish? Maybe we have, complementary selfishnesses.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I'm talking to a chick now. We'll see how that goes in a few more podcasts. I haven't really talked about that. We're doing all right. It's kind of a long distance relationship. It's not really. She's like an hour and a half away. So
Not too bad.
it's not, and we've known each other a long time. Really, we have known each other. Let's see, I'm 26. Yeah, like 6 or 7 years, and we've. There was a period where we didn't talk at all, of course, but then I contacted her, and then every now and then we would Facebook, and then just one bright day I was like, I am going to hit on her with the intentions of trying to go after her, and then my intentions became reality. My fantasy became my reality. So, and it's been pretty unique. We both say that it's very weird how it's just happened, I guess, because you would have.
Well, I am happy for you and wish you the best of luck. And maybe, the flip side to moving somewhere to be engaged with somebody too soon, now you've got somebody you've known a lot longer, and you've got a distance built in, so maybe everything is working in your favor now.
So Myq Kaplan is saying that I can get married tomorrow. No, just...
Oh, yeah, you got it. Yeah, I'm fine.
So I guess that's about all. It's been 1:05, so I say that would be it. Do you got any plugs or anything you want to do for your Twitter? Feel free to, because, if you want to talk,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we mentioned my podcast. I think I already said, pretty much everything's at my website, myqkaplan.com, MyQKAPLAN.com. And you can get there like my first couple albums, which are on iTunes. You can get a link to my Netflix special, which is called Small, Dork, and Handsome. You can get links to my podcast, Hang Out With Me, which is at keepingthegirl.com/hang. And, other things, videos, tour dates, it's all there. Just put Myq Kaplan spelled the way I weirdly spell it into your computer, at Twitter, at Facebook, at Vine, at YouTube, on iTunes, or just .com, and you'll get all of it.
All right, man. I really, really appreciate you coming on, and I hope one day we can do this again, because this has been really fun for me, and I hope it's been fun for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. For having me.
I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can get you back on. And if not, this was still a big day for me. I really do like what you do, so it's been a big deal, and I really appreciate you coming on.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your kind words, and I was real happy to be here, and I'm happy to come back at some point in the future. Time travel.
Hello?
Hey, remember me? Oh, really?
What?
You don't remember me?
Listen to this bitch, bro.
Just listen. You're gonna be a daddy, and that's it.
I'm gonna be a daddy, yo. What? I think I should have taken that exit, actually.
We met at the bar. I went home with you. And we, Do you remember me now? Yeah,
Yeah.
Listen, the real reason I called is I'm late.
You're late, oh shit.
I think it's yours.
Oh, no way.
Look, I haven't been with anyone since you. I'm pretty sure it's yours.
You lying thought. You a lying trash asshole. What you mean?
Don't you think you'd make a great daddy? I think you would.
Fuck no.
I know it's a lot, but I'm sure everything will work out for the best.
Hell yeah, it probably will.
Well, anyways, I just got to the doctor's office.
Alright, go in and get your pussy checked.
I'll call you soon about this, okay?
Alright, do that.
You've just been pranked by prankdial.com.
Shit, where are you going? You know where we're going?
I know the manager, his name is Curtis Blow. He don't get high, but baby, if you want, he'll go down low. Doing a podcast on a random Thursday night. Girl, this blow, he's gonna make you feel alright. I know the manager, he knows what's going down. He'll make you laugh, but he damn sure is not a clown. I know the manager, and this man, he's got clout. He's gonna make you scream, you know he'll make you shout. He's gonna make you scream, he'll know he'll make you shout. I know the manager, yeah.